the world witnessing the quiet rise of a new global power right under America's nose? While President Trump's sudden exit from the G7 left his seat cold and empty, Canada was already moving fast, cutting deals, forging alliances, and filling voids the US once dominated. But is this a fleeting moment or the start of a seismic shift that could reshape the balance of power across continents? Stay with us as we dive inside the summit halls to uncover exactly how Canada is redrawing the global map, from defense pacts with Korea to critical minerals deals that challenge China's grip. The G7 summit in Alberta this June could have been yet another high-profile ritual of polite speeches, photo ops, and carefully worded communiques. Instead, it turned into a showcase of Canada's strategic ambition and, perhaps more importantly, a glaring reminder of the United States' receding appetite for global leadership under President Trump's second term. But was this simply a matter of Canada stepping up because Washington stepped back? Or does it reflect a deeper reconfiguration of power among the world's advanced democracies? Trump's empty chair, a symbol of more than absence. When President Trump abruptly departed the Alberta summit before the final sessions, leaving American seats conspicuously vacant, it wasn't just a diplomatic snub. It sent ripples of uncertainty across every delegation. In those empty chairs, Ottawa saw not just a gap, but an opportunity, one that Prime Minister Mark Carney was quick to seize. Within hours, the Canadian delegation restructured key agenda items: defense cooperation, global development financing, and critical mineral security, pulling them decisively into Canada's orbit. Carney put it delicately. This week, we tried a new geometry of working together. But under the polished language lurked a stark reality. The post-war architecture of the G7, long dominated by US coordination, was starting to splinter. Is this just a passing storm, or the birth of a genuinely multipolar club? Forging new security axes, the Arctic-Pacific Pact with Seoul. Perhaps the most striking maneuver came during a bilateral with South Korean President Lee Jung. Barely 2 weeks into his presidency, Lee chose Canada for his first major foreign venture, a calculated statement of Korea's new doctrine: zero problems, maximum trade. In a matter of hours, Ottawa and Seoul transformed a relationship once centered narrowly on liquefied natural gas into a far-reaching security compact. Canada's new Arctic drone surveillance fleet will feature advanced sensor arrays built in South Korea. In turn, South Korea's Navy will construct 2 hybrid patrol vessels designed in British Columbia, securing a literal manufacturing bridge between the Pacific and Arctic. What does this mean for the US-anchored Five Eyes defense ecosystem? With these agreements, Ottawa effectively ushered Seoul into a strategic circle Washington has guarded jealously for decades. And here's the tantalizing question. Is this the dawn of a new, more diversified Pacific-Arctic security architecture, or just Canada papering over America's temporary indifference? Stepping where USAID stopped, Canada's $544 million bet on Latin America. As if to underscore its new global posture, Ottawa unveiled a $544 million guarantee fund to bankroll infrastructure, poverty alleviation, and climate resilience projects across Latin America and the Caribbean. This comes precisely as Washington slashes its USAID budget by a staggering $60 billion, abandoning long-term contracts in everything from African malaria prevention to Pacific coastal adaptation. Of course, Canada's fund is small relative to what the US is withdrawing. But it's not about dollar-to-dollar replacement. Instead, Ottawa is signaling its willingness to be a catalyst, using modest public guarantees to attract multilateral and private capital. Consider the symbolism: wind farms in Jamaica, cocoa processing hubs in Colombia, climate insurance pools in Honduras, all underwritten by Canada, not by the traditional hemispheric hegemon. Will this be enough to fill the void? Or does it simply highlight how perilously dependent global development finance had become on a single actor's whim? Carney versus Trump, the steel tariff tightrope. Trade was where the philosophical gulf yawned widest. Trump's threats to double tariffs on imported steel and aluminum, up to 50%, rattled allies. When pressed on this, Carney deftly avoided open confrontation, framing U.S. protectionism as a minefield in the international accounting system. Yet his restraint was strategic, not submissive. Asked whether Canada might retaliate, he answered coolly, "Our position is clear. There may be different perspectives in other capitals, but we will use the tools at our disposal as necessary." In other words, not a provocation, but a warning. Canada is prepared to push back, just not in a reckless tit-for-tat that could spiral. Is this disciplined ambiguity the hallmark of mature statecraft, or merely evidence of Canada hedging until Washington's winds shift again? From Ukraine to Iron Dome, testing Ottawa's strategic nerve. Perhaps the most consequential evidence of Canada's evolving global stance came in its military commitments. Ottawa announced another $2.3 billion in loans to Ukraine, alongside drones, howitzer ammunition, and energy grid repairs, all despite clear U.S. resistance to harsh anti-Russia language in the final G7 text. Carney was blunt. If the text had been left to us, we would have written it more strongly. A subtle rebuke, but unmistakable. Then came the real strategic provocation. Canada declared it was exploring participation in the Iron Dome missile defense system, potentially extending NORAD's air defense umbrella beyond mere sovereignty patrols to layered anti-ballistic coverage, even in the Arctic. Trump scoffed at the projected $71 billion cost, but Carney cut through the accounting quibbles with chilling clarity. Our geography is no longer a natural shield. The ballistic threat is real. It's not about money, it's about strategy. Is this the prelude to Canada finally shouldering hard military burdens that for generations it largely outsourced to American might? Building a new supply chain club, the Critical Minerals Quartet. Economic security took center stage in Alberta as well. Canada brokered a four-nation alliance with Germany, South Korea, and Japan, designed to break China's stranglehold on critical minerals, from nickel and cobalt to gallium and germanium. Under this pact, Canadian mines will feed German processors. South Korean firms will supply advanced battery cell packs. Japan will contribute rare earth recycling tech. Even more quietly, they agreed on shared AI data protocols and quantum chip testbeds, forging a technical rule set outside Beijing and Moscow's frameworks. It's a decisive move to rewrite the digital playbook among like-minded democracies, not wait for fractured global bodies to catch up. But here's the question that should haunt every boardroom and war room alike. Will these friends-whoring initiatives prove resilient under stress, or crack under the sheer complexity of multilateral interests if a crisis truly hits? Climate, satellites, and the new soft power arena. Canada also found room to champion a global forest fire satellite early warning system, using European, Japanese, and Canadian sensors. Given the 18 million hectares Canada lost to fires in 2023, it's both a domestic priority and a moral calling. Carney's team cleverly framed this as a realm where geopolitical rivalry recedes. Disasters do not respect blocks. Yet even here, Canada's partnerships pointedly avoided China or Russia. Is this the future of soft power competition? Not about aid gifts, but about who designs the planetary safety nets? Nostalgia is not a strategy. In his closing remarks, Carney took direct aim at what might be called Trump's retro economics. 50 years ago, the G7 came together not to preserve an old order, but to create a new one. Nostalgia cannot be a strategy in times of such transformation. We must turn crises into solutions appropriate to the times. When pressed by journalists quoting the White House, "Make it simple," they say. You say complexity is hidden in plain sight. Is compromise possible? Carney shot back. Complexity is often system awareness. In that exchange lay the philosophical heart of the summit. For Trump, blunt tools and easy slogans. For Carney, intricate interdependencies demanding subtlety and patience. Canada's calculated risk, playing midfield. While America vacates the pitch. Throughout the summit, Canada revealed a quiet but profound evolution. Ottawa is no longer content to be merely a reliable adjunct to U.S. power. Instead, it's experimenting with becoming a strategic convener in its own right, weaving together defense deals, financial guarantees, climate tech, and digital standards. Of course, this carries risks. Canada's new Latin America guarantees are nowhere near large enough to offset the vacuum from vanished U.S. aid. Its Critical Minerals Club is fragile, dependent on sustained multilateral goodwill. And there's still the looming specter of tariff escalation, which could gut Canadian manufacturing if Washington's economic nationalism intensifies. So will Canada's moment in the sun endure or fade when the next White House decides to retake the stage? What do you think? Is Canada genuinely charting a bold new course in global affairs, or simply filling a temporary gap left by U.S. retrenchment? Could this reshaped G7 become a long-term multipolar hub, or will Washington inevitably pull it back into its old orbit? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you see these power shifts playing out.